It's Monday, November 13, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Thanks for joining us. I am Fernella Wedderburn. We begin on a tragic note. The body of one of the two men who went missing over the weekend has been found. The man's body was seen floating in the water near the Animal Flower Cave just before 3 p.m. yesterday. His name has not yet been released, even as the search continues for his friend. The two men, who were described as a 38-year-old police constable from St. Peter and his 49-year-old friend from St. Thomas, were reportedly fishing on the sea rocks in the area of the cave located in Connelltown, St. Lucie, sometime after 11 p.m. last Friday, when they disappeared. Meanwhile, a 16-year-old schoolboy lost his life while at Port Ferdinand beach in St. Peter yesterday. According to police, the young man from St. George got into difficulty around 5 minutes past 3 yesterday while in the water and was pulled out by two sea beavers who administered CPR. An ambulance was summoned, but the teenager was pronounced dead at the scene. In other news, classes will resume at Belmont Primary School today following a two-day closure. The Mylors Hill St. Michael Education Facility was forced to close its doors last week due to an environment problem in the area. However, following the necessary investigations, education and health officials say they are satisfied that the school can reopen its doors to pupils and staff. The former head of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, Jeremy Collymore, says the damage caused across the region by Hurricanes Irma and Maria provide an opportunity for the Caribbean to revisit the issue of development financing. Collymore was addressing a panel discussion on the topic Recovery, Reconstruction and Resilience at the Vice-Chancellor's Forum at the University of the West Indies on the weekend. The Caribbean suffered billions of dollars in damage when the two Category 5 storms struck in September. And Collymore says the affected islands will begin to rebuild, but they must adopt a different approach to their development.
The Caribbean has for several years led an articulation of a vulnerability index. That has come to a pause. You need to reflect on its availability and to see what differently we could do about it. And I think this is the opportunity for a space to look at a re-articulated engagement on development financing. And the result of the British discussion with the OECD to facilitate access for overseas territories in a non-traditional way is a new space that we have to explore in what I call our resilient diplomacy. And I will argue that a key missing link from the development and resilient discourse is diplomacy. We must be at the table of the issues that talk about re-articulation of humanitarian finance, as raised by Ambassador Bernal. And all of those discourses about the agenda for humanity, we need to be at the table and vigorously articulating our positions.
At the same time, Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, is making a case for reparations for the Caribbean islands devastated by the two hurricanes. Sir Hilary argued that European economies were built by wealth created in Caribbean colonies, but whatever relief will be provided to the affected countries will be a fraction of what was extracted from this region over 400 years. He added that while Caribbean countries take responsibility for their own well-being, their former colonial masters have a duty to help them rebuild.
We are mobilizing around Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda. We are mobilizing because they are part of our nationalist landscape. It is natural for us to mobilize around our nationalist upsurge. I remember very well Gilbert and its devastation of Jamaica. In 2 months, Jamaica was back on its feet and moving because there was a phenomenal upsurge of nationalism, a phenomenal upsurge of Caribbean integration. All the peoples of the Caribbean moved into Jamaica, and Jamaica was back on its feet. I'm concerned about how we have taken for granted the issues of history and the future.
There's regional and international news after this short break. Join us from November 16th to 19th, 2017 for the Barbados Food and Rum Festival, where acclaimed Barbadian chefs and mixologists are joined by Chef Jean-Georges of the US, Chef Tom Akins of the UK, Chef Chris De La Rosa of Canada to create dining experiences to delight the senses. Visit ticketpal.com and all TicketPal locations to get your tickets, and visit foodandrum.com for more information.
On the regional front, Bermuda's economic plans will not be derailed. That's the message from the island's Premier, David Burt, who continues to dispel criticism of the island as a tax haven following the release of the so-called Paradise Papers. He is also confident Bermuda's reputation will survive the fallout of the papers that resulted in the financial information of several international high-net-worth individuals being made public.
The message is getting out. I think that Bermuda is a world established leader in this space. Bermuda has had leadership in this space, and we will continue to have leadership in this space. It's recognized by such international organizations such as the OECD, and even those elements inside the United Kingdom government that recognize that Bermuda has been leading in this space and is certainly doing what is necessary and required. That is known around the world. We have to remember, people will have political agendas, and the political agendas which people may have are not going to distract us from what is necessary to grow Bermuda's economy and to take into account the changes which are happening in the global economy. But we're going to be ready to meet those, because any changes brings opportunity, and that is what this government is focused on.
The EU, is talking about perhaps stepping up measures against so-called tax havens, and they continue to lump Bermuda in with that group. There is some discussion or some talk that once the UK leaves the EU, that pressure is really going to be stepped up. Is Bermuda already making plans, or is it on what is Bermuda doing in that regard?
Bermuda has continued to cooperate with the European Union. We have agreements that exist outside of the United Kingdom with the European Union, and we're going to continue to be engaged in that process. The EU is looking at non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. Bermuda is a cooperative tax jurisdiction and will continue to be so.
Further afield, at least 61 people are dead after a powerful 7.3 magnitude earthquake rocked Iraq on Sunday. According to reports, some 300 people were also injured during the quake, which was centered about 350 kilometers north of Baghdad and felt throughout the country. The earthquake sparked panic, with residents fleeing their homes for the streets. Shocks were also felt in Pakistan, Lebanon, Kuwait, and Turkey.
This was a sizable earthquake, a magnitude 7.3, which is really saying something. It has been about 30 years since anything of this magnitude has actually impacted this region. And we also know it was a shallow quake, only 23 kilometers below the surface. So combining those two in terms of the intensity and the shallowness, it is unfortunately leading to many fatalities there now and injuries as well. So as you mentioned, this is located right along the border here of Iraq and Iran. It's about 300 kilometers or so to the northeast of Baghdad, but mind you, about 75,000 people in Baghdad reportedly felt this quake that far away. And when you take a look at the sheer numbers here who at least felt something, tens of millions of people in this region basically feeling the impacts of this quake.
And that's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. Also, subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, and like us on Facebook. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals or screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you, as well as Mix 96.9 FM. I'm Fernella Wedderburn. Good morning.